The anomalous defense. The Valkyrie battle fleet emerged from fold space with precision that spoke of countless military campaigns. 17 warships arranged in the legendary Spear Formation, a tactical configuration that had subdued 100 worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Commander Trezak watched the small blue-green planet grow larger on the main view screen, his 4 eyes narrowing with anticipation. "Status of the human colony?" he asked, mandibles clicking softly. His tactical officer's skin rippled with yellow efficiency patterns. "Settlement designation Sierra Tango 47. Population approximately 2,800 humans. Primary function: tungsten and rare earth mining. Defensive capabilities: minimal. 3 outdated defense turrets and a small security force armed with standard-issue kinetic weapons." Trezak's exoskeletal ridge expanded slightly, the Valkyrie equivalent of a dismissive snort. "Open communications." The view screen flickered, revealing the face of a human female. Her skin was the color of the planet's soil, her eyes dark and steady. She wore no military insignia, merely the jumpsuit of a mining administrator. "This is Administrator Chen of Sierra Tango 47. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Trezak rose to his full height, towering over his command chair. "I am Fleet Commander Trezak of the Valkyrie Dominion. Your settlement occupies a planet rich in resources claimed by our empire. You will surrender immediately. Resistance probability has been calculated at 0.04%. The human's expression remained unchanged. "And if we decline?" The bridge crew exchanged glances. This response deviated from expected parameters. The tactical officer recalculated quickly. "Sir, historical data shows humans always surrender when facing these odds." Trezak's mandibles clicked with what passed for amusement among his kind. "Then you will be eliminated. Administrator Chen, your species has encountered the Valkyrie before. You know our technological superiority. You have 30 minutes to lower your shields and prepare for occupation." To the commander's surprise, the human's mouth curved upward at the edges, a gesture his cultural database identified as a smile, though it held no warmth. "We'll get back to you on that," she said, and terminated the connection. "Insolence," hissed Trezak's second-in-command. "Shall we begin the bombardment immediately?" "No. Follow protocol. They will surrender when the deadline approaches. They always do." Trezak settled back into his command chair. "Deploy reconnaissance drones. I want detailed scans of their defenses." 20 minutes later, the tactical officer's skin had shifted to an alarming orange. "Sir, the humans are. They're moving equipment." "Explain." "Mining equipment, sir. They're positioning industrial drilling platforms along their perimeter, and they appear to be modifying their extraction lasers." Trezak leaned forward. "Show me." The view screen displayed humans in mining exosuits working feverishly, rerouting power systems, and mounting industrial cutting equipment onto mobile platforms. Others were unspooling what appeared to be detonation cord around the colony's perimeter. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving transmission fragments. Internal communications from the human settlement." "Let me hear." The bridge speakers crackled with a human voice, strained but unmistakably enthusiastic. "Like Thermopylae, all over again. Jenkins, get those plasma cutters to the North Ridge. Rodriguez, your team has 5 minutes to rig the methane processing plant. Remember what Captain Santos always said." The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're preparing to fight," Trezak said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Recalculate, tactical." "Sir, their actions are irrational. They cannot win." "The deadline has passed," announced the communications officer. "No surrender signal." Trezak rose from his chair. "Begin the operation. Send in the first wave." 3 Valkyrie landing craft descended toward the human settlement, each carrying 50 elite soldiers. The operation would be textbook. Secure the command center, neutralize any resistance, begin resource extraction. Except nothing about this engagement would follow the textbook. The first landing craft had barely entered the atmosphere when one of the outdated defense turrets swiveled with unexpected speed. A concentrated beam, clearly modified from mining equipment, lanced upward, cutting through the craft's shields as if they were vapor. The vessel split neatly in two, its pieces tumbling toward the surface. Impossible. Trezak's ridge flared with shock. Their weapons shouldn't penetrate our shields. They've converted industrial cutting lasers into military-grade weaponry, the tactical officer reported, his skin now pulsing a distressed purple. The mining lasers operate on frequencies our shields aren't calibrated to block. The second landing craft veered to avoid the defense turret's fire, only to fly directly over what appeared to be an ordinary processing facility. The facility exploded with force far beyond any conventional explosive, engulfing the craft in superheated plasma. "They've weaponized their refinery," the tactical officer whispered, converting the processing chambers into makeshift fusion bombs. On the view screen, humans in powered mining exoskeletons were engaging the troops from the third landing craft. The exosuits, designed to lift tons of rock, now wielded improvised weapons, drilling apparatus that punched through Valkyrie armor, and hydraulic claws that crushed exoskeletons with terrifying efficiency. "Status report," Trezak demanded, his voice no longer confident. 2 landing craft destroyed. Third craft reporting heavy casualties. "Sir, they're fighting harder because they're outnumbered. It defies all rational behavior models." Trezak watched as a human in a mining exosuit charged directly into a group of Valkyrie soldiers, a wild expression on her face. She was clearly doomed, yet she attacked with ferocity that sent shockwaves through the Valkyrie command center. "Full tactical bombardment," Trezak ordered. "Now." But as the Valkyrie fleet repositioned for an orbital strike, new alarms sounded throughout the bridge. Multiple signatures emerging from the planet's moon, the sensor officer announced. "Sir, they appear to be mining ships." "Mining ships?" Trezak repeated. "Dismiss them. Focus on the colony." "Sir, they're on an intercept course, and they've been modified." On the tactical display, 12 vessels, clearly converted from ore haulers and maintenance tugs, accelerated toward the Valkyrie fleet. Their engines glowed white-hot, pushed far beyond safety parameters. "Evasive action," Trezak commanded, but it was too late. The first mining ship, little more than a reinforced cockpit with massive grappling mechanisms attached, seized an asteroid from the planet's ring and hurled it directly into the path of the Valkyrie flagship. The impact shook the entire vessel, alarms blaring throughout the command center. "Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer. 3 more mining vessels approaching, similar attack pattern. "This is madness," Trezak whispered. "They're sacrificing themselves." A new transmission cut through the chaos. Administrator Chen's face appeared on screen, now streaked with dirt and what might have been blood. Behind her, humans worked feverishly to reinforce barricades. "Commander Trezak," she said, her voice steady despite the explosion that rocked her command center. "I believe you miscalculated. Your odds were off by quite a bit." "This resistance is futile," Trezak replied, though his mandibles trembled slightly. "You cannot win." "Winning isn't the point," Chen replied. "Making your victory so costly that you'll never try again. That's the point." The transmission cut off as another converted mining vessel slammed into one of the Valkyrie cruisers, its reactor detonating in a blinding flash. Trezak turned to his science officer, a slender Valkyrie with more sophisticated neural patterns than most warriors. "Explain this behavior. Why do they fight when defeat is certain?" The science officer's skin displayed the complex patterns of deep analysis. "I believe we're witnessing what xenopsychologists call the human paradox, sir. Unlike every other spacefaring species, humans appear to increase their combat effectiveness when the odds against them worsen." "That's irrational," Trezak argued. "No species evolves such a trait." "Humans did," replied the science officer. I recommend immediate consultation with our xenopsychology division. We may have severely underestimated this species. On the tactical display, another Valkyrie warship listed to the side, crippled by what appeared to be a converted ore hauler that had been piloted directly into its propulsion system. The human pilot had ejected at the last moment and was now using a handheld thruster to make her way back to another mining vessel, transmitting an obscene gesture toward the Valkyrie flagship as she went. Trzak watched in stunned silence. For the first time in his distinguished military career, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his thorax. A cold, creeping sensation that humans called fear. "Contact the xenopsychology division," he ordered. "I want to speak with our foremost expert on human behavior. Immediately." The survival paradox. Dr. Xalara adjusted the environmental controls in her laboratory for the third time. Humans required an absurd amount of oxygen and operated at temperatures that most civilized species would find uncomfortably warm. Still, proper scientific inquiry demanded proper conditions. Recording continuation of Xenobehavioral Study 4628, Anomalous Combat Response in Human Specimens, she dictated, her translucent skin shifting to the deep blue of scientific focus. The holographic display around her illuminated with battlefield data from across human history. Xalara had spent 3 standard months compiling these records, and they defied everything she knew about rational conflict resolution. Marathon, 490 BCE. Greek forces outnumbered 2-1 by Persian invaders charged directly into enemy lines rather than retreating, resulting in unexpected victory. She flipped to the next display. Agincourt, 1415 CE. English forces numbering approximately 6,000 defeated French forces of 20,000 or more. Another flick. The Alamo, 1836 CE. 200 humans defended against an estimated 1,800 Mexican soldiers. Though defeated, their resistance became culturally significant and contributed to eventual victory. The list went on, spanning centuries and continents, each example more perplexing than the last. What's most notable, Xalara mused, switching to a data visualization, is not merely that humans occasionally win despite poor odds. Statistical anomalies exist in all data sets. Rather, it's the consistent improvement in performance metrics when their situation deteriorates. The chart displayed human combat efficiency rising in direct correlation with worsening odds. It's as though they've evolved a sort of psychological afterburner. A soft chime indicated her new research subject had arrived. The door slid open to reveal 2 Valkyrie guards escorting the human male, his wrists bound in restraint fields. He was one of the miners captured during the Sierra Tango 47 conflict. "Specialist Rodriguez, thank you for agreeing to this interview," Xalara said, dismissing the guards with a color shift to commanding Burgundy. "Like I had a choice," he replied, dropping into the chair opposite her desk. "Indeed. Yet your mining colony managed to destroy 5 warships and damage 7 more before we implemented a strategic withdrawal. According to our models, you should have surrendered immediately." Rodriguez shrugged, a uniquely human gesture that Xalara had learned indicated casual dismissal. "Your models don't account for humans having their backs against the wall." Xalara's epidermis shifted to curious teal. "This phrase appears frequently in your combat literature, back against the wall. I've also documented cornered, do or die, last stand, and nothing to lose. Could you explain the psychological state these terms describe?" Rodriguez leaned forward suddenly, animated. "Look, it's simple. When escape is impossible and surrender means death or worse, what's the downside to fighting like hell? When you've got nothing to lose, you can risk everything. But survival probability isn't the only factor," Rodriguez interrupted. "Sometimes it's about making the other guy pay such a high price that even if you lose, you've still won something." Xalara's recording appendage worked furiously to capture these insights. "You fought harder because victory was impossible. This contradicts every rational combat doctrine in the galaxy. That's because you're all apex predators, Rodriguez said with a knowing smirk. You evolved as the hunters, always at the top of your food chains. Humans didn't. This observation caused Solara to still completely, a Valkyrie expression of profound realization. You're suggesting your combat psychology derives from your evolutionary history as prey animals. Bingo. For most of our history, we weren't the strongest or the fastest. We had to get crafty. When a predator cornered us, we couldn't outrun it, so we learned to fight with desperate creativity. He tapped his temple. We turned our fear into a weapon. Solara's skin rippled with the deep blue of scientific excitement as a hypothesis formed. So when Dominion forces create a no-escape scenario, they're accidentally triggering an ancient survival mechanism, Rodriguez finished. One that says if you're going down anyway, take the predator with you. We call it the cornered rat phenomenon. Even a small creature becomes deadly when it has nowhere to run. Solara glanced at her display, showing the battle recordings from Sierra Tango 47. Humans using mining equipment in ways its designers never intended, converting life support systems into weapons, using their lives as bait to draw enemies into traps. Fascinating, she whispered. And your entire species possesses this response. Rodriguez's expression darkened, some more than others, but push any human hard enough. And yeah, you'll see it. And here's the thing your bosses should know. We're not just fighting harder because we're scared. We've turned that instinct into a point of pride. Being outnumbered, against impossible odds. That's not a deterrent to us. It's practically an invitation. For the first time in her distinguished career, Solara felt a sensation that her species rarely experienced. A chill of genuine unease. Her skin involuntarily flashed warning crimson before she could suppress it. You find our survival instinct disturbing, Rodriguez observed with surprising perceptiveness. Maybe you should. But remember this. Your people have been apex predators so long you've forgotten what it's like to be hunted. We haven't. High Admiral Trezak stood before the Valkyrie War Council, his posture rigid with the strain of delivering an unprecedented report. The operation at Sierra Tango 47 resulted in the loss of 5 warships, with 7 more requiring extensive repairs. The mining colony remains under human control. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Elder Commander Vorax, his exoskeleton bearing the ceremonial scars of 50 successful campaigns, leaned forward. You had 17 warships against a mining colony, Commander Trezak. Explain this failure. Trezak gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. The 3-dimensional representation of the Sierra Tango engagement rotated slowly, human positions highlighted in red, Valkyrie in blue. This, he began, voice modulated to Project Authority, should not have happened. A wave of clicking mandibles indicated agreement from the assembled strategists. Yet it did, countered Elder Vorax, and we would be fools to dismiss it as an anomaly. I am not suggesting dismissal, Trezak replied. This engagement violates every principle of strategic doctrine the Dominion has established over millennia. Look at these patterns. He manipulated the display to show the trajectories of the human mining ships. Their movements appeared chaotic, borderline suicidal, yet achieved devastating effectiveness. 7 civilian vessels with minimal modifications destroyed 4 warships and damaged 3 more before we implemented withdrawal. Our casualties were 38%. Theirs were 93%. That's the key point, interjected Science Director Solara, stepping forward to join Trezak at the center of the chamber, an unprecedented breach of protocol that demonstrated the gravity of the situation. They accepted near-total loss of their defense force as an acceptable outcome. No species in the Dominion would consider such a trade beneficial. We call it the human paradox, she continued, interfacing her data with the main display. It is the observable phenomenon wherein human combat effectiveness increases in inverse proportion to their survival probability. The display transformed to show a statistical model with a curved line trending sharply upward as survival chances decreased. In simple terms, Trzak translated, the closer to death they are, the more dangerous they become. Preposterous, scoffed Elder Commander Vorax. No species evolves such a counterintuitive response. It violates the fundamental laws of self-preservation. And yet, Solara countered, the empirical evidence is irrefutable. We've analyzed 372 human military engagements spanning their recorded history. The pattern holds true with statistical significance of 98.4%. She highlighted several historical battles from human records, Thermopylae, the Alamo, Bastogne, each showing the same pattern of outmatched humans achieving improbable outcomes. The breakthrough came when we realized this isn't a military anomaly, she explained. It's a species-wide psychological adaptation with evolutionary roots. Humans evolved as persistent predators who were simultaneously prey for larger carnivores. They developed complementary survival strategies, cooperative defense, and resource maximization under threat. Trzak stepped forward, his battle-scarred mandibles clicking in a pattern denoting grave concern. The military implications cannot be overstated. Our entire doctrine is built upon the principle that overwhelming force leads to rational surrender. Humans not only reject this principle, they weaponize its opposite. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled upon the gathered war council. Are you suggesting, Elder Vorax asked carefully, that human unpredictability is more dangerous than our technological superiority? Technology, Trzak replied, operates within predictable parameters. We can calculate weapon yields, shield capacities, drive outputs. But how do you calculate the actions of a species that becomes more effective when their situation deteriorates? What is the recommended response? Another council member inquired, mandibles trembling with uncharacteristic agitation. Solara and Trzak exchanged glances before the admiral answered. The Joint Military Scientific Initiative has formulated 3 potential strategies, he said. First, overwhelming force application with at least 50-to-1 numerical superiority, ensuring complete annihilation before the paradox can manifest. Approving clicks circulated through the chamber. Second, avoiding placing humans in no-escape scenarios that trigger their enhanced combat effectiveness. Allow them retreat options in all engagements. This recommendation received considerably less enthusiasm. Or third, Solara interjected, her skin shifting to the gold of diplomatic possibility. We reconsider our approach to human worlds entirely. The chamber erupted in protest, but Solara continued, undeterred. Consider the evidence. Humans fight hardest when defending their homes, their families, when their backs are, as they say, against the wall. But historical analysis shows they can be reasonable, even generous, when approached with respect and fair exchange. You suggest diplomacy with primitives. Elder Vorax's mandibles clicked in disdain. I suggest recognizing that we may have encountered the first species whose response to overwhelming force is to fight harder rather than surrender, Solara replied. A species that sees last stands as glorious rather than wasteful. A species that has turned its evolutionary fight-or-die response into cultural mythos. She highlighted the mining colony on the display. This was supposed to be a simple resource extraction. Instead, it cost us 5 warships and altered our understanding of interspecies psychology. Trzak stepped forward again. The Dominion has conquered 100 worlds by applying overwhelming force against rational opponents. But humans aren't rational by our standards. There's something we've never encountered before, a species that becomes most dangerous precisely when it should be most harmless. He gestured to the display, where footage showed a human miner in an exosuit charging a squad of Valkyrie soldiers, her face displaying what their cultural database identified as a battle cry. My recommendation as military commander is this. We either commit to full extermination, requiring resources beyond our current deployment capabilities, or we initiate diplomatic protocols for resource-sharing agreements. The War Council chamber remained silent for several moments, the implications of this unprecedented recommendation settling over the assembly. And if diplomacy fails? Elder Vorax finally asked. Trezak's mandibles clicked in the Valkyrie equivalent of a grim smile. Then we face a species that thrives on being outgunned, outnumbered, and cornered. A species whose historical records show they've never encountered odds they weren't willing to fight. A species that smiles when you tell them they cannot win. His 4 eyes focused on the human image frozen on the display, an insignificant bipedal creature who had nevertheless fought with such ferocity that it had forced a galactic empire to reconsider its expansion strategies. "Let us hope diplomacy succeeds," he said softly. "For all our sakes."